Today we're going to be taking a look at one of the most underappreciated weapons in all of Deep Rock Galactic. Today we're going to be talking about the Pickaxe. So the Pickaxe is a weapon that comes with every dwarf, and you actually get it at the very start of your journey in Deep Rock Galactic. The Pickaxe is first shown as a tool, allowing you to mine materials and also dig your way through the caves. But this isn't the only thing that the Pickaxe can do. It can also serve as a weapon, and it serves as a weapon pretty well. This is one of the few weapons in the game that actually has melee damage on it, and almost everything in this game is weak to melee. Robots don't like melee, bugs don't like melee either. The only other two options that we have for melee are actually both of Driller's weapons, being his drills and his throwing axes. So Driller gets 3 options for melee, while everybody else just gets 1 option. The Pickaxe, I would argue, should be one of the first things that you actually upgrade on any dwarf. One, because the upgrades aren't that expensive, nor is there very many upgrades where we only have 4 options in total, and one of them is kind of mandatory for a tier 1. In tier 1, we have probably the most impactful upgrade out of any upgrade in the game, besides maybe like Thin Containment Field for the EPC, but we have our power attack here in tier 1. Now this doesn't cost very much, where it only costs you 800 credits and then 10 Bismore. Should be pretty easy for you to get, and this one allows you to use your power attack. This is a very powerful move that does have a cooldown after you use it, but you can use this an unlimited amount of times throughout the dive. This can one-shot most bugs on most difficulties, even up to Hazard 5. You can still one-shot grunts with this, which is very nice. It also has a very high chance of stunning enemies when you do hit them too. So even if you don't kill something like a slasher right up in your face, you can still potentially stun it and then move a little bit away. This, as well as the regular pickaxe attacks, also combine really well with the perk Vampire, since this is really the only way that any class besides Driller can trigger this. Once you kill an enemy, then you can get 5 health back from it, which may not sound like a whole lot, but if you do this routinely throughout the mission, it can save you a decent amount of health and makes it so you don't need to be getting resupplies or red sugar as often, as well as you can actually save yourself with this too if you have the perk Iron Will. In order to do this, just pick yourself up from Iron Will, kill something with your pickaxe and you'll get health back, and then at the end of the Iron Will duration, you'll be left standing, so you just picked yourself up that way. This can be super useful for pretty much any dwarf, which is one of the reasons why you see this build run on very high level dwarfs pretty much all the time. It's very strong and it just allows you to save yourself, as well as the passive bonus from Vampire can be really useful. So the power attack can be very, very useful. It can also be triggered multiple times if you have the perk Berserker. Once you've used it once, then you can use it again. Berserker does have a fairly long cooldown on it, but as long as this is going, you have free power attacks, and power attacks make it so you can deal lots of DPS. This perk can be particularly strong against big enemies like oppressors, where you can hit oppressors anywhere with a pickaxe and you'll deal damage to them, as well as it can also be used really well against dreadnoughts, dealing really high damage to them, because the pickaxe doesn't really care where you're hitting an enemy. You don't need to be hitting them in the weak spot. The pickaxe damage will carry through just about anything. For our tier 2 options, we actually have 3 pretty good ones here. Our very first one is the Serrated Edge. This one gives us 120 more damage on power attacks. This one can be really good, because then you go up to 240 power attack damage. The damage from this is very impressive. It makes it so you can one-shot things like slashers on any difficulty, as well as you can do really high damage to pretty much any big enemy that you come across. Our second option is the Shockwave. This gives us 1 more meter of power attack AoE. This one is probably the one that I see people using the least, and I would argue that it's the least good on the Pickaxe. The Pickaxe does actually have AoE on power attacks, but the AoE radius is pretty small, so hitting multiple enemies with this is kind of hard unless there's just a bunch of them swarming around you. The Shockwave makes it so you can potentially hit more enemies with this, which can be kind of useful, especially if you hit a bunch of smaller enemies like grunts and you have Vampire going, so you could potentially leech more health off of them. But I just don't think that this is as useful as either dealing double damage with your power attacks with our first option, or our very last option, which is better weight balance. This takes 10 seconds off of your power attack cooldown. The power attack generally has a 30-second cooldown. This will reduce it to a 20-second cooldown, which that's generally the one that I go for. I find this to be incredibly useful because I can just use my power attacks even more often, and most of the time I'm just power attacking regular grunts, especially if I'm using Vampire to where I can get my health back. Just having this up more often is very, very useful. You can actually make this cooldown even better with one of the daily beers, that being Slayer Stout. Slayer Stout reduces your pickaxe cooldown by an immense amount. It actually reduces it by 75%, meaning that it's no longer a 20-second cooldown, it's only a 5-second cooldown, making it so Slayer Stout is arguably one of the best beers that you can get. There are actually 2 other beers that affect the pickaxe as well. First up is Rocky Mountain. This one makes it so your pickaxe hits on terrain take less hits than they otherwise would. This is incredibly useful on pretty much every biome unless you're going to Sandblast. If you're going to Sandblast, then this one doesn't really do anything since Sandblast already breaks with 1 pickaxe hit. But anywhere else, it pretty much makes it so Sandblast is the norm. And then we also have Skullcrusher's Ale, which gives you an additional 20 more base damage on the pickaxe hit, which is very useful for just normal hits on the pickaxe. Since it already does decent damage on regular hits, you can kill other enemies even faster. This one can also stack with another active perk, See You in Hell. This makes it so whenever you take damage, you get bonus melee damage for a few seconds. This is already pretty strong with a pickaxe, but it's even stronger with Skullcrusher's Ale. It's also just a very fun perk. Melee builds generally aren't the most popular in Deep Rock, again, because there's not really a whole lot of classes that can do it. Basically, it's just Driller. You can make it work with Scout, though, too, since Scout can move around the map very quickly, and it works really well inside of Gunner's Shield. It's a really good way to proc Vampire, and it has gotten better as of Season 5, too, since we have the Ebonite infestation as well. This will make it so Molly can spit out the charges, which will just give you Berserker on your pickaxe. So that's really good, and if you want to stack it with Berserker, that can be even better. The pickaxe is a surprisingly good weapon in Deep Rock, and a weapon I'm just not seeing a whole lot of new dwarfs really using. I would recommend that you use it quite a bit more, though, if you find yourself not really using the pickaxe very much, because it actually does really good damage. It's a good way of saving ammo. It's always around, so you can always use it. And for just killing enemies that are at low health or low priority enemies, it can be really useful. Tell me your thoughts on it, and how do you like using the pickaxe as a weapon? Thank you guys so very much for watching this. I hope that you guys enjoyed it, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye, everybody.